Hey guys, my name is Jess, trail name Sassafras. This year I hiked the Appalachian Trail all the way from Georgia to Maine over the course of 6 months, and I thought it might be a good idea to talk about what kind of gear I brought. I think that's one of the biggest questions and hang-ups a lot of people have before they get out on trail. Some people just go to a Walmart and buy whatever they see in sight. Some people will obsessively research, maybe a little bit like I did, before they come out and consult all the Facebook groups and do all the Googling. And I just thought that I would share all the things that I bought and brought with me because I survived. And if I survived the AT, then if you had my kit or some things from my kit, maybe you would survive too. A lot of these things I had before I left for trail. I wasn't totally just buying a brand new kit right out the gate. So I'm just gonna include that as a disclaimer. It's some stuff I had before. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Oh, another thing I want to mention too is that there is links to everything that I'm going to talk about in today's video down below, as well as links to some things I'm not going to cover. I'm not going to run you through literally everything that I packed. Like, you don't need to know about what kind of soap I used, but if you're curious, the link to the kind of soap I used is in the bio along with everything else. Okay, let's jump into it. Okay, so when you think about backpacking, the first thing you're going to talk about is the backpack. So let's talk about the backpack. I had the Durston Kakwa 55-liter backpack. This was a huge choice for me. I really went back and forth on what kind of backpack I wanted to bring. I have run the gauntlet from Osprey to Gregory in the past. I was looking at the Hyperlight mountain gear for a little bit. I was looking at the Mariposa, a ton of backpacks. And ultimately, I landed on the Durston for quite a few reasons. One, it is really, really light. It's just about 2 pounds, and for it being just about 2 pounds, it's really affordable in terms of ultralight backpacks in this category. It's Dyneema, which means that it has all the benefits of being really tough, durable, water resistant, I think maybe waterproof. There were only a few times my backpack soaked through, and that was in really intense rain, or I put it in a puddle. Another really awesome thing about this backpack, it has load lifters, it has an internal frame, and for an ultralight backpack at this price point, that is really, really hard to find. The only thing I will say about this backpack, a couple of things. It's definitely built to be efficient and ultralight. That means there's not a lot of bells and whistles. You're not going to find a super humongous stretchy mesh pocket. I know that looks big, but once there's stuff in here, really not a lot fits in there. Kind of like most people say, the Hyperlight mountain gear backpacks can fit a ton in the mesh. Additionally, you're not gonna find an enormous amount of loops and secret pockets all over the place. With this backpack, what you see is what you get. Another thing I want to mention too, and this was one of the major downsides for me, especially later on in the hike, as I started to lose a bunch of weight and my waist got thinner. You can't swap out the hip belt. So if you start a hike a few pounds heavier and then you lose weight as you do on a through hike, you either should have a smaller backpack on gear, or on deck, or just be ready for some shoulder and back pain. It was pretty manageable for me most days, but I wasn't going to go out and buy another backpack when this was still a perfectly good one. So highly recommend the Durston Kakwa 55-liter, especially during the colder months when I had a ton of cold weather gear in this backpack. It fit all of it. So huge fan, definitely recommend the Durston Kakwa 55-liter. All right, so next up I'm going to talk about my trekking poles. These are the only trekking poles I have ever owned. They have come with me on every backpacking trip I've ever done, several day hikes, and now an entire through hike of the Appalachian Trail. The only thing that ever happened that was not cool with these trekking poles is that up here you can see I'm starting to see some wear on the handles. Oh, and also a trekking pole tip snapped off, which happens and is totally replaceable. But these things are sturdy. They've never let me down, knock on wood. I've used them to pole vault across bogs and through rocks. They've been stuck in between rocks and not broken, have bared my weight. So highly recommend. And if you were considering doing a hike of the Appalachian Trail, or honestly any like pretty strenuous, like very climby kind of backpacking trip and not bring trekking poles, I would advise against it. I did meet plenty of people that hiked without trekking poles. That's cool. But I am freshly off trail and my knees hurt even with the trekking poles. So I am a fan. I recommend, especially the Lecky Cascades. All right, so let's talk about sleep system. This is definitely one of the most important areas that you don't want to compromise on when it comes to your thru hike. You want to know that you are sleeping comfortably, that you're going to stay dry, that your backpack's not going to be crazy heavy, that you're going to stay warm, especially in the cold months. So this is a really, really important area. People often refer to several of these pieces as the big three. I think that's like tent, sleeping pad, and sleeping bag. But I definitely made some compromises here. So I'm gonna tell you what that means. Okay, so first up, I'm gonna talk about my tent. I had the Copper Spur by Big Agnes, the ultralight one. I loved that tent. I loved it. Was it the perfect tent? Absolutely not, but it was perfect for me. A couple of things I want to mention about it. It is really, really light, definitely a top performer in the tent poles tent category as compared to like the trekking pole tents, you know, your Z-Packs, your Durston Mids. This is a very affordable, very light, freestanding tent, and additionally, like, it's pretty durable. I will say my tent pole did snap, but I've had this tent for 2 seasons, and the tent pole didn't snap until I was well into Vermont. So it still lasted the rest of my thru hike. That was about like a month and a half, I think, after that tent pole snapped. It was very roomy and it mostly held up to rain. I think I only had maybe 2 or 3 nights, one really notable one on Spy Rock where the thunderstorm was directly overhead and just like dumping water on my tent for hours, and that the water was definitely pouring into my tent after that. But again, I want to reiterate, like, this is a several seasons old tent. It hasn't been nick waxed. It is just direct from manufacturer and has been taken in the field and field tested, and it is great, keeps the bugs out, mostly keeps the rain out. Again, was really durable, have never had any issues with, you know, sticks or rocks going through the ground sheet, any of that. So huge fan. Another thing that I want to call out too, especially on the rainy AT, and disclaimer, my time on the AT was relatively dry as compared to what I understand to be previous years, where even last year where folks hiking through Vermont got 11 straight months of rain. This was a relatively dry AT season, but that being said, if it was a crazy, crazy rainy AT season or wherever you're backpacking, it's super, super rainy. The cool thing about the Copper Spur is that if you have the ground sheet made for this tent, you can put that down and then set up your rain fly before your inner mesh. So that means if it's pouring rain, you got to camp and you don't want all of your stuff to get wet, the inside of your tent to get soaking wet, you can successfully throw up your rain fly, keep all of your stuff dry, and then go in there and pull up your mesh and you're good to go. I didn't have to use that feature many times. I actually think I only used it one time, again, really dry season. But I only used it one time, and that was because I was hanging out on a beach for a 0 at Canopus Beach in New York, and I was using it for shade. So again, awesome tent, highly recommend the Copper Spur. Big Agnes does really awesome stuff. I've heard great things about the Tiger Tree, I think it's called, the Tiger Wall. So yes, Big Agnes, big yes, highly recommend. All right, so next up I want to talk about sleeping pads. I went through 2 while I was on trail, and by that I mean I had a X-Therm that I had for the first like 3-4 months of trail. That was my winter season sleeping pad. It had a crazy high R value, was really light. Downsides with it, and you'll hear these all the time, it is a super squeaky sleeping pad. Like if you're rolling over in the night, everybody knows, like, you're not gonna be the quietest sleeper. And when you're sleeping in shelters or your tent is in close proximity to other people, you can get kind of self-conscious about it. You don't really want to bother people, and it can wake you up too. So that was definitely a downside. That being said, super durable sleeping pad. All of the shelters I slept in with that sleeping pad, no pops, no tears, no deflation. Definitely kept me warm. I could tell that the inside of the pad, even on really cold days, that the air in there was insulated because I wouldn't feel it, and like the pad wouldn't be cold to the touch. So kept me alive in February and early March when it was freezing. But I did, once it got warmer outside, swap that out. I sent it home and I got the Climate V2. This is not a lighter pad. It's actually like a little bit heavier, but this pad is so comfortable. I've had this pad for several seasons. I honestly think, gosh, I don't know, whenever the V2 came out, that's when I bought it. I've had it for a while now. And I sleep amazing on it. When it's really hot outside, I stay nice and cool. I can roll all over it. I'm a side sleeper, I'm a belly sleeper, I'm everything but a back sleeper. And when that thing is inflated, I am not hitting the ground. So huge fan of the Climate V2, especially in the summer months, and it got me through Maine and New Hampshire even when it was chillier. So highly recommend. All right, so let's talk about quilts. I had the Enlightened Equipment 20-degree convert stock sleeping quilt bag thing for the majority of the trail. This thing is awesome. It is a great quilt. Definitely kept me warm. A couple things I'll say about it. It is expensive for sure. You do pay for good quality, I believe. But that being said, I definitely noticed, especially at different portions, that the down would clump up and separate, which means that I would be getting like air drafts in pockets of it. And this wasn't like months into the hike. This was like several weeks into the hike. And in February, when it was like some 20-degree nights below, or like high 20s, for people who watched my channel and like my videos that early on, you'll remember that I sleep really cold, and there was a lot of nights where I was like kind of suffering. So will a 20-degree Enlightened Equipment quilt get you through 20-degree nights on the AT? You'll live. You'll survive. That's what it's graded for. Will you be super comfortable? Will you sleep very well? No. The other thing I'll say too is that was even combined with liners and all of my base layers and sometimes hot hands and like a beanie. So I was going to every effort to keep myself warm even with this. Now maybe I'm just what's the word? I don't know. Maybe I'm just the exception. Maybe most people are perfectly comfortable with this. I know that I lent this to my friend Rifle a couple of times when it was really cold outside, and I used his 0-degree, which kept me so warm and so toasty, and he said that he was burning up in this on nights where I was really cold. So I think you just have to know yourself as a sleeper, and if you're like, oh well, I do sleep cold, but I don't want to spare the extra expense on weight, just think of it in terms of how comfortable do you want to sleep while you're on trail. In my opinion, I wish I would have gone for a 0-degree when it was really cold. This was awesome for like the last few weeks on trail when it was in the 40s some nights, mainly like the 50s and 60s. Definitely not in the 40s, actually scratch that. It was like the 50s and 60s. This was great for that. Was not so great when it was really cold outside. So know yourself, err on the side of caution if you're really nervous about it. You can always unzip or keep it open and lay it over you, or take extra clothes off if you end up sleeping hot. But if you're sleeping hot in 30-degree weather and you're starting in February, like, I don't know, that's a you problem. Another layer of sleep system is the liner, especially for people who are starting in the colder months. You may want to consider bringing a liner with you, especially for those really cold nights. It also can provide a layer for you in between your sleeping bag and your body, your like gross, sweaty, dirty body, so that you're not like getting your sleeping bag all gross. So a lot of people like those. Some people opt for like silk liners in that case. When it was cold outside, I opted for the Sea to Summit liners. I had the Compact Plus first, and frankly, it was not keeping me warm enough. Night 5, I believe it was, or night 4, I was freezing cold, and the next day I walked into Neal's Gap to Mountain Crossings, and I walked inside and I bought myself an extreme liner so I would sleep warmer. And I actually lent this to my friend 2 Chains, and she just mailed it back to me. So I liked the liners. I thought they were helpful, especially for super cold sleepers. They're not for everybody. They're definitely heavy, they're definitely expensive, but I felt like they really saved my butt in a couple of pinches. So I am pro Sea to Summit liners, but that's with the caveat that I understand that they are not for everybody. All right, so I want to talk about pillow next. I know some people believe very strongly that a pillow is a luxury item. I do not believe that. I believe the total opposite. I am incredibly jealous and do not at all understand the people who don't bring pillows and can just like sleep on a sweatshirt or their backpack and be totally comfortable. Love that for you. I am not that person. I need a really good pillow in order to get a really good night's sleep and hike well the next day. So I opted for the Nemo Philo. This is a slightly heavier pillow option. It's definitely bulkier than like your typical inflatable pillow, but this is a hybrid like memory foam inflatable pillow situation. It's awesome. I love it. I would recommend it to anybody. It's so comfortable and it holds onto air. I never worried about it getting leaks or pops, and basically every pillow I've ever used before on trail leaked or popped. So I'm so impressed that this made it all the way through the Appalachian Trail and is going to make it into future hikes. So huge fan, Nemo Philo, go get it. The other thing too is that you can take the pillowcase off and wash it. I love that. So I would say that the other luxury item that I brought with me on trail, and this wasn't with me for the entirety of trail. I waited, I think until till Harper's Ferry. I got this on Harper's Ferry. I waited until then to get it because it is pretty bulky and I didn't feel great about the redundancy, but I was having plantar fasciitis issues at the time and I wanted something to stretch on. So this brought the Nemo into my life. Highly recommend. It's so cool. The other thing I like about it too is that it is a bit of a redundancy. If my sleeping pad pops, my other one, I can sleep on this instead of just laying on the hard ground. I can take it out and lay all my stuff on it so it's not just sitting in the dirt. I can stretch on it, I can take a nap on it. I love this thing. It is bulky, but I was able to just like slide it into the mesh of my kakwa and it stayed out of the way. I liked it. Definitely not for everybody. I could see myself not bringing it on future hikes, but it was really cool. I'm glad I had it. The thing I did do was snip off more than a few of these, panels, I guess you would call it. I did snip a few off so that it was lighter and shorter and easier to pack down. You won't get any sort of like manufacturer's warranty if you start cutting this up, but I did. And the last piece of my sleep system is actually a piece of tech. It is my sleeping pad pump, the FlexTail sleeping pad pump. I love this thing. I love it. I think it's 100% worth it. It's worth the money. It's worth bringing with you on trail. At the end of a long day, the last thing that I wanted to do was crawl into my tent and spend like 2 straight minutes blowing up my sleeping pad. I live in the future. I don't want to do that. So I love this thing. It is light. It's cheap. I think this was like, I think I got it on sale. It was like maybe 20 bucks on Amazon. The only thing, and this is this specific design, I think they have since improved on it since I bought this, but if this was sitting in this bag and my bag was in my bag, I would roll it up sometimes and whatever was pressing in would hit this button and would go off in my bag. It drove me crazy. It drove me crazy. that was the only thing about this that I hated. And again, I think they have since improved on that design. So get the improved version, carry it with you, be happy. So let's talk about water filter. I primarily use the Katadyn Be Free. I originally found out about that filter through Nahemsha, her gear video before I even hiked. I'd never heard of it before. Everybody that I hiked with were Sawyer people or like iodine tablet people, and I just thought that was what you did. So when I heard about the Katadyn Be Free, I was like, oh, sick, like let's try something new. Nahemsha recommends it, I'm gonna give it a go. I love the Katadyn. It is light, it is durable. I think I was able to make it like, gosh, at least 1,800 miles, maybe 1,900 before there was a pop in the bag that I had. So that is awesome. The filter, when you first buy it, the flow rate is crazy. It's so awesome, goes so fast. Like people are turning their heads like, dang, look at the flow rate on that thing. So I loved the Katadyn. Okay, so let's talk about some tech. I am a blogger. I vlog, I record things. I need more battery power than your average through hiker. So I was using the Nightcore, the 10,000. I had 2 of these. Yes, I know they make a 20,000 version, but hear me out. If I go to charge 2 of these and one fails, that's okay, because I know I have a second one that is charged and I can make it work. When I first came out on trail, I thought I had charged one of these. Like my first 5 days of trail, I had like no battery because this failed. Like it was me, I just didn't charge it. So from that point on, I knew it's better to be safe than sorry, especially when it comes to something like your safety or your phone battery. I wanted to make sure I always had access to far out, that I could text my family, that always knew where I am, and I needed to make my vlogs. So I had to have battery power. So I carry 2 of these. They're pretty reasonably priced. They're super light, they're really thin, they're compact. So highly recommend the Nightcore 10,000. I also use a Nightcore Headlamp. This thing is great. It is really powerful, really awesome at keeping a battery. I did plenty of night hiking in this thing. The red light is good. It's user intuitive. I don't know what else I could say other than if you need a headlamp option, I highly recommend Nightcore's headlamps. And the last thing that I'm going to talk about is clothes. This is super personalized. I'm a 5'1" girly. Like if you're a dude and you're watching this, like don't buy my clothes, whatever. That being said, I think that the ideas here, the base layers, the puffy, all these things are applicable for everybody. So I don't know, maybe I'll learn something. First thing I'm going to talk about is my puffy. I was using the Enlightened equipment Torrid. It was super light, really warm. There were times where I was really cold and I was like, there is no possible way I am going to get warmer. And I would throw this on and I heated right up. It does an amazing job of retaining body heat, trapping it in, warming you up. It's very compactable and I never sent it home. It was so light that I just felt like I could hang on to it. You never knew when you were going to be cold. I remembered Bad Bat was talking about right before she summited that like the day before it was freezing at camp, wherever she was camped, and like she had sent all of her cold stuff home, and I was like, that's not gonna be me. I'm gonna hold on to my puffy at the very least. So glad I had it. Highly recommend. It's definitely expensive. There's probably better options out there, but I think that Dixie also uses this, Homemade Wanderlust, and I would trust her with my life. So big fan of the Torrid, highly recommend. Another really cool piece of my kit that I didn't have at first, but was actually gifted to me, was these Gators. Gadget gave me these Dirty Girl Gators as a gift, a surprise, and I think honestly probably so that I would stop having to pause and dump like rocks and dirt out of my shoes every 10 minutes. So highly recommend the Dirty Girl Gators. Only thing I'll say about them is they come with a like piece of like Velcro and tapeable like Velcro hooks that you can put onto your shoe. those like fell off often for me. I know that they say like to put them on like clean dry shoes, and I did, and they still fell off. And I'm sure if I had like grabbed some crazy glue and put that on there too, it would have stuck. But that is like the world's smallest criticism. They make good stuff. They go through the washer and dryer just fine. They keep things out of your shoes. I don't know what more you could ask for. Another key piece of my clothing kit, especially for all of you who sleep really cold like me, was my down booties. I loved my down booties. They were so cute, and they were really light, and they're really cozy, and they were so cheap. Like, I just grabbed a pair off Amazon, y'all. Like, I didn't go get the Enlightened equipment Torrid booties that I know a lot of people like to use. And I'm sure if I was like, I don't know, in the Sierras and like a high snowpack year or whatever, like I would be very happy to have the down booties. That being said, like my feet stayed perfectly warm with just a generic pair of like synthetic down booties that I bought on Amazon. So if you sleep cold and you're worried about your feet getting chilly in the middle of the night, I highly recommend getting yourself a pair of down booties. And the last thing I'm going to talk about with my clothes is my rain jacket. I had 2 rain jackets. The first rain jacket that I was using when I first got on trail and it was really cold outside, and I knew that if my underclothes soaked through, I would be in trouble, especially when it was going to drop into the 20s at night. So I had the Patagonia Torrent shell. This is like probably one of the #1 rain jacket recommendations you'll see if you look up like ultralight backpacking rain jackets. It is on the heavy dutier side. It's like not as light as like a Montebello, for instance. That being said, it's an awesome rain jacket. No, it doesn't pack down especially light or especially small, but it keeps you dry. I did send it home as soon as it started getting hot out because it's definitely a heavy duty, really well insulated rain jacket. And the issue with a rain jacket is sweating through it. So if you're sweating through it, then like you might as well just take it off because you're gonna be getting wet anyway. So then I switched to my North Face rain jacket, and I've had this for several seasons. It's so old at this point, I don't even like know exactly what rain jacket it is. But I had my parents bring it with them when they came to visit in Harper's Ferry. I re-nick waxed it, and it did a fairly good job of keeping me dry. It would hold on to water, that was my major complaint, but like, I don't know, just get a better summer rain jacket. I cheaped out and just used one that I had lying around. So something that I'm really happy that I did for trail was invest in like a good pair of earplugs. These are the Loop Quiets. They are effective, they work, they keep sound out. They are small, they come with a little carrying case, so I never worry about them getting lost. If I was in a shelter and somebody was snoring really loud, or I was having a night where I was having a hard time falling asleep because of rain in my tent, I was always really happy to have a good pair of earplugs. And I think for the AT, especially for those sleeping in shelters around all the loud snowers, you're going to be really happy that you brought some of these and aren't just like relying on whatever free earplugs that they have sometimes at like hostels or whatever. So highly recommend, really cheap, cute, like what an adorable carrying case. I like the loops. And finally, the last thing I'm going to talk about from my kit is my Coola Cloth. This is clean. This is a clean Coola Cloth. For all the girlies out there that don't want to just drip dry, this is great. And I've heard some people complaining about them holding on to smell. I never experienced that. I always felt like it got really clean whenever I washed it. And for me personally, not everybody did this. I kept it right at my waist. I learned that from Wonder Woman, who is a Triple Crowner as of this year. Congrats, Wonder Woman. That was complaining about how I always had to like rip off my backpack when I had to pee because my Coola Cloth was on my backpack. And she was like, girl, just put your Coola Cloth where you need it. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess I can do that. So highly recommend the Coola Cloth. highly recommend having it in an accessible place. But this is a great piece of gear, and I have seen like some knockoffs like at Walmart or whatever. I actually think that Gadget bought one of those and hated it. It's very clearly not the same material, not made with backpackers in mind. And also all the Coola Cloths come in really cool designs. And when you see somebody with your Coola Cloth, you're like, oh my God, I like your Coola Cloth. And it's fun. I recommend it. Okay, so final thoughts. I liked my kit. I liked what I brought. I was a big fan. Did I have the lightest backpack in the world? No. Did I have all of the most optimized, like, cutting edge gear? Absolutely not. Did I make decisions about the stuff that I was carrying that like your average backpacker would, such as carrying like 2 kinds of pads and a luxury pillow? Like, absolutely not. That being said, I had fun. I was really comfortable. I slept well most nights. I never felt like my backpack was way too heavy. The day that I summited Katahdin, my backpack was 22 pounds. That was with no food left, you know? And I had thrown out some stuff prior to summiting. But I think at the heaviest, my backpack was like 32 pounds. So, I don't know. I guess what I'll say to you is don't stress about it. If you're trying to figure out what gear that you want to bring on your thru hike, whether the Appalachian Trail or a different thru hike, don't stress about it. Like, the point of the backpack and all the stuff you bring is to give you the best possible shot of making it to the end. That's it. Like, you're just trying to give yourself like your greatest odds of completing the thru hike. But compromising like a little bit here and a little bit here, like, is not going to make the difference on whether or not you make it all the way to the end. You actually have a much better chance of making it to the end if you're sleeping comfortably every single night, or you're eating well because you brought like a cook stove. Like, just remember, it's supposed to be fun. Picking gear for your backpack, it's supposed to be fun. Like, we do this because we enjoy it. We don't have to punish ourselves. And the other thing I'll say too is that my philosophy on what to bring backpacking is not the end-all be-all philosophy. Some people really, really enjoy getting their backpacks as light as freaking possible, and that's what does it for them. I was hiking with people whose backpacks were like 12 pounds, and they were sleeping on the ground under a tarp with no quilt or anything, and they were happy as can be. So figure out what works for you, play around. You can always start a trail, and if you're doing a thru hike, like, just mail something up trail. Like, if this doesn't work for you, mail that home, sell it later, or have somebody sell it for you. I don't know, trade it with someone. People did that on trail too. They traded gear with people and then buy something and have it sent to you later. Do what you need to do, but don't stress about it. If you're determined on making it to the end of the hike, you know, the only thing that matters is that you don't freeze to death, you can filter your water, you can eat, and you can walk. Everything else will figure itself out. So yeah, that was my gear. That was everything I brought. I lived. I hope you live when you do your thru hike. Let me know your thoughts below. I'm definitely tweaking my kit a bit for my next thru hike and my next trip that I have coming up here shortly. But in the meantime, thank you for watching, and see you out there.